Welcome everyone to episode 3 of KSR's new basketball breakdown show, Floppy Action. We've got a whole crew of KSR panelists here. We've got myself, Zack Geoghegan, Peake in the middle, our videographer, producer, whatever headline or title you want to give him. He's a man of many trades. We also have Ramsey down there with 6 years of college coaching experience. Does pretty much everything that you could ask for basketball-wise over there on KSR. We're going to go ahead and jump into our first play here. We are going back to the North Carolina game. Kentucky picked up a big win down there in Atlanta. Our first play that Ramsey spotted pretty quickly on his rewatch. We see early in the second half here, kind of some just small ball movement up at the top of the key. Ultimately, the play begins where we have DJ at the top here. He dishes the ball over to Trey Mitchell on his left. And Trey Mitchell, as we all have come to know pretty quickly, whenever he has the ball in his hands at the top of the key, his eyes are usually up. He's looking for a quick pass. And then what we see is Antonio Reeves comes up, sets a fake screen essentially, with DJ moving behind him. Reeves cuts into the middle instead of setting that pick. Mitchell sees him. Easy pass to him, cuts in there, and Antonio Reeves gets fouled on the play. There's kind of a lot of smaller things going on here that we'll dive into. We've got one of the main things I noticed immediately, Brandon, was Aaron Bradshaw in the corner, really dragging our man Baycott out from the paint and giving Reeves that open lane. So I'll just go ahead and let you kind of dive into this and do your X's and O breakdown of what you saw and why this was a play that you chose in particular to break down.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few really positive things that you can gather from this clip. First and foremost, as you mentioned, Zach, like the spacing here is excellent, and it's especially good to see that 5-out spacing continue with Bradshaw and Mitchell playing together. Obviously that's something that, honestly, rightfully so, because of a couple years worth of not very good spacing and maybe playing some lineups that were a bit too big at times. Like we all got worried when Bradshaw came back of what the spacing was going to look like, and then you had a couple of comments from Coach Calipari about how he was going to play him and, playing some more big guys. And that all kind of gets us not feeling so great until you see it. And then it's like, okay, this is all working out pretty darn well. And this is a perfect example of that, because you have Bradshaw spaced out there to the corner, and you're able to get to this flare screen action, which is something that you don't normally see a ton from Kentucky because we don't run as much traditional motion as some teams. But this is like a true 5-out motion play right here, where the possession before this, they get to the exact same action. DJ Wagner hits a 3 behind the flare. This time, you can see Carolina kind of overplaying the flare a little bit. They're trying to get over the top to chase DJ Wagner, and that allows Antonio Reeves to slip the screen, which is essentially kind of like that fake screen. You never really set the screen. Teams do this a lot when the opponent is switching. It's hard to switch when there's no screen, so teams will slip it to the basket to get into the paint, and that's where you see Trey Mitchell deliver the pass, and they end up fouling. Antonio Reeves goes to the free throw line. So this is something that is not necessarily like a set called play. It's just an action within sort of a structure, like 5-out offense being the structure, the flare screen being the action, but it's not necessarily something where it's like, hey, we're looking to score off of this 100% of the time. It just happened to be open on this play. High IQ play by Antonio Reeves to read it and slip to the basket. And yeah, it's great offense, great spacing, and it's what we've been seeing even with Bradshaw in there, how we've been able to maintain that 5-out structure and that spacing that we all hope to see.
Now we're going to shift to the defensive side of the ball here. We're going to stick with the Kentucky-North Carolina game there. We're in about midway through the first half here. Kentucky has a 5-point lead. North Carolina, if I remember correctly, was doing a lot of this action early on, trying to get Baycott involved on the block. And here Kentucky just handles it perfectly, about as well as you can handle an all-ACC type player, as big as Baycott, literally getting to his spot. That's the spot that he wants to get, maybe a couple feet closer, but right there, that's where he's trying to get to every time. You see Adu bring multiple double teams. He fools or it messes up Baycott enough, and obviously you've got great defense there by Bradshaw as well, keeping his hands straight up. He hasn't always done that so far this year, but in this instance, he does a great job of keeping his arms straight up. Adu brings that double. It forces Baycott to reset. Then we get another double once Baycott gets the ball again from Adu. And I think one of the things I noticed most about this play is you've got the two bench guards right behind him, and Rob and Reed do a really good job of basically covering 3 guys at once. Those two covering 3 guys, and that's when we talk about those two being really good team defenders, off-ball defenders. I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. And then a dude just using his huge frame, body size, muscles to force Bacot into this. This is just like a quarterback, throwing like a lob ball essentially off his back foot to no man's land. It falls right to Rob. He gets in with him in a head of speed. He's already charging down in transition there. Gets fouled on the play. So it was a good play overall on the defensive end. Brandon, what did you see from your perspective? Why was this a play that you decided to use for our breakdown here?
As soon as I saw this play live, I was incredibly excited about what was happening. I was like, I hope we talk about this on Floppy Action, because it is you couldn't have asked me to get out my nerd whiteboard and draw up the Kentucky defense more perfectly than this. And if listeners or the Steven and Zach, you guys, if you remember our last episode of Floppy Action when we previewed a clip of North Carolina, we showed how getting Armando Bacot to catch it a step or two off of the block and then bringing that help from the top side to kind of force him back away from the rim. We saw how that worked when, I think that was a clip from the UConn game, where UConn did a really good job kind of similarly to what Kentucky does here. And it's like, I'm assuming that Kentucky might have watched that exact same clip at some point. Maybe they subscribed to Floppy Action, I don't know. But, this was just so textbook. And I'm glad you brought up what happened kind of away from the ball. Because, Aduthier is going to get a lot of the credit here, and he absolutely deserves it. Like, the timing of both of his doubles on Bacot were perfect. Like, you generally want to wait. You want to wait until the guy takes a dribble, so it's not so easy for him to pass out. And then Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham cracking down to take the two guys closer to the basket, not worrying about their matchups so much. And something that this came to me as you were talking, Zach, where I think a very good kind of synopsis of the Kentucky defense right now is often wrong but never in doubt. And they are decisive in what they do, and that's why they force turnovers. That's why they block shots. That's why they come up with excellent plays like this. And it's also why it kind of looks like crap sometimes, because they're often wrong, but they're never in doubt of what they think they're supposed to do. Especially Reed and Rob, those guys are decisive, and they go and try to make a play. But this is really a five-man, nearly perfect defensive possession, something we admittedly haven't seen a ton of, but it's flashes like this that, when people worry about the defense, or they ask, Kentucky, can Kentucky get better defensively? This makes you say yes. This makes you say they can be, as I keep saying, good enough defensively to do what they need to do this season.
Look how Adu does this without fouling. I think is also very or something we should point out. Does this without fouling, doesn't really touch him too much. Just kind of the threat of getting in his space really bothered Bacot. And this was exactly kind of what we talked about in the last game. This is how you would slow down Bacot, and it led to just a very overall sound defensive possession. We didn't. DJ Wagner, I guess, he just does a good job of just staying on his man.
That's what I was actually gonna ask you guys about. I mean, DJ Wagner, does he deserve some credit here? He's denying that easy pass back to, I think, RJ Davis there, right?
Mm-hmm. I'd absolutely say that he deserves some credit for sure.
Yeah, we had a play last week, I think, where DJ Wagner was kind of the unsung hero of the play. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
People need to keep watching. We're breaking stuff down over here. I mean, not so much me, but they're breaking stuff down over here.
and Zach said it. Zach talked about how they're almost playing zone on the backside there, Reed and Rob, and it's really not almost that's literally the terminology. Coaches will talk about if you're going to double the post, the things you talk about are you want to kill the first pass, which, to Steven's point, that's what DJ Wagner's doing. He's killing the easy kick out pass to RJ Davis. Just so you take that off the board, then you zone up on the backside. You essentially have two guys guarding three. And then your hope is, and of course it never even got to this point because we were able to get Bacot so off balance that you just stole the pass. But then your goal is to then kind of KYP, know your personnel of, depending on where the ball goes, who are we closing out to?
Now we'll dive into our last play here. We're going full on with the brands. We're going into a floppy action play designed specifically for Antonio Reeves, who was red hot at this point. He had 19 points. He'd already made 3 or 4 threes. So the goal here at the end of this first half is to try him, get him another look. We set the ball up at the top here. Reeves does his first floppy action move to try and get himself around Bradshaw. He gets himself up at the top of the key, but Sky Clark for Louisville does a good job of trailing him. makes it so Reeves has to pass the ball back out, but Reeves immediately goes right back into the same action. Kind of him and Sky Clark, as you can see down there, getting into a little bit of a tussle of sorts, but it ends up with, instead of Reeves going back around to the right of Bradshaw, he this time skirts around to the left. It makes more of a runway for Sky Clark to have to trail after him. It gets Reeves into just enough of a space where he gets just a clean or enough amount of space to get the shot over Sky, who, to his credit, does a good job of contesting this. But as Steven pointed out when we were also off camera, this took about 0.7 seconds for Reeves to catch the ball and fire it from his fingertips. I doubt the ball actually even touched his palms on this shot, and it just results in it results in another made three. Kentucky goes up by 20 going to the half. But this was beautiful floppy action work. I'm sure there's more going on behind the scenes in this play here that, Brandon, I will let you break down, or wherever you want to start, you could dive right in.
Yeah, this is just very well executed, and it's really more about Antonio Reeves being incredible than anything else. Like, you know, the reason you go floppy action in a situation like this, and we've seen it down the stretch of a couple other games, is like it's just a good structured way to run a little bit of clock. Like at the end of the first half, you want to make sure you get the last shot here. I mean, this shot by Antonio Reeves, like this is like Reggie Miller level running away. Like we just talked about Kentucky's ability to cut towards the basket. Obviously here he's cutting away, like he's cutting dead away from the basket and has to flip his hips, get himself turned, get his shoulders turned to the basket. And as Steven pointed out, he does all of that literally in 0.7 seconds. Like, that's incredible. His ability to be moving away from the rim to then get off still a picture perfect shot like this, and to be able to play through that level of contact, like him and, as you said, him and Sky Clark are completely tangled up, and he kind of just, you know, says screw you, and, you know, gets through it and is able to get off a great shot.
Reeves is catching the ball the way he did, coming up to the left side there. Is it harder to catch and shoot like that when you're kind of fading to your left as a right-handed shooter, or fading to your right as a right-handed shooter?
Generally speaking, right-handed shooters want to be moving to their left. So like because then you're kind of moving into it. So yeah, like what Reeves did here is actually harder. Like his first cut when he went on the outside of the screen, like, is a little bit like you're kind of curling into it, and like you can kind of plant that left foot and come into your shot this way, as opposed to having to kind of plant your right foot and turn back into it. So yeah, like the degree of difficulty here is high, but yeah, he made Sky Clark take a little bit of a longer route. Like, you know, we would say kind of like looked like Magellan taking a bad route through the seas. But he does so well. That's a very dated reference, I guess.
Yeah,
I loved it. I love the reference.
Yeah, Vincent Van Gogh back behind the scenes. He appreciated his good friend Magellan getting a shout out.
That was good.
but yeah, I mean, there's really there's no X's and O's hardly to this, other than, you know, shout out floppy action. It's just Antonio Reeves is awesome.
Hey,
go ahead, Steve.
Sorry,
go for it.
Sorry, Zach. I never want to miss an opportunity also to give Reed Shepard a shout out. So what you can't see right there on Zach's shoulder, or we'll pull it up full screen. But he puts the ball, you know, where Reeves is gonna be, and that allows him to be able to get a shot off in 0.7 seconds. I mean, he throws that pass behind him or throws it up high or low, but he puts it not only right where he can catch and shoot it, but where he was gonna be to catch it and shoot it.
Well, I think Reeves also he's the perfect shooter to do this type of shot, because his release it's generally not this quick, but his release overall is very quick, like one motion. He jumps maybe 3 or 4 inches off the ground with every single jump shot, sometimes not even that high. So I think it's obviously a very hard shot, but for him, that's probably not that difficult, because it's just a little bit more sped up. You know, he's not having to jump 2 feet in the air to try and get himself over Sky or anything. It's still just, it's a fluid one-shot motion. He squares his shoulders immediately. I don't know how shooters can do that type of stuff so well, but
good boxing out there by Louisville. That's Kenny Payne's coaching. Lifetime contract for Kenny Payne.
Louisville's really good at getting the ball out of the net.
So here's something that people have been talking about. Fans, as a fan, it's something that I'm a little bit concerned about going into SEC play, but then even further than that, as they go into the postseason, and that is being able to get stops late in the game. So you look through Kentucky's last 4 minutes, the defense in the last 4 minutes versus Kansas, allowing those two Harris threes still kill me. Again, they got a shot clock violation. That was their only stop. If y'all remember, we talked about if Kentucky ran a play like that at the end of the game, we'd all be furious. But they go through UNCW, kind of similar thing, just unable to get a stop. And then when we were at the North Carolina game, I felt like I was back in Chicago watching the Kansas game again. So 43 points in 12 minutes. We actually figured out, too, that we left out a game, and that was St. Joseph's. So they did get a couple more stops there, causing turnovers. But it feels like, I swear, it feels like every time a team gets a shot off against us, doesn't matter how tough the shot is, it goes in. It doesn't matter how good of a shooter they are, it goes in. This is the one, guys, from Kansas. And I'm telling you, these are moving screens. We can't play the motion for you, but go back, watch it. 303 in the Kansas game. These are moving screens. You will not be able to convince me otherwise. Hunter Dickinson getting away with everything. So here's one you might be able to see. I mean, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I'm fine with being wrong, but I want to know for my own sanity. How is it that you can? It's not technically a screen, but just he's like setting a block on a Thiero.
It is an illegal. It should be called an illegal screen, but Hunter Dickinson, admittedly, for as much of things that he does that aren't very fun to watch, like. He is probably the best illegal screen setter in the country because he's very good at making it look like he's not really doing anything.
We need to get this information out. This is very important for college basketball, that people know about this so that referees know about it so they can fix it, right? No,
yeah. So opposing coaches are already watching this to break down film, so the refs need to watch this show as well to figure out, how to officiate.
Exactly. You go to the UNCW game, you look at how they gave up the buckets here. I mean, what more? Justin Edwards is on his guy, you can't see it, but the whole play, he's got his hand in his face. This is just an insanely tough shot.
Well, I don't know if you're going to like the answer, but I think part of it is just luck. You just showed that UNC Wilmington shot where Justin Edwards was right in his face. A lot of it is just guys making really big shots at really big times.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong sometimes with just tipping your hat to the opponent and saying they played well. Now, yes, it gets more frustrating when it seems to happen so often, and you start to sometimes wonder, like, well, are we the common denominator here? But I think there's a couple of important things to point out. One, we're talking about essentially 4 games here, 2 of which we won. So ultimately, 2 of these games worked out just fine. The other 2, one of them is against Kansas, which is potentially one of the best teams in the country, and it was a good overall player hitting wide open shots. Yes, they were the shots that we chose to give him, but still, like, DeJuan Harris is an all Big 12 player, and he's a 4th or 5th year college player that was hitting wide open threes. Now, yes, like we chose to give him those, and I if we played him again tomorrow, I would do it again. But sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you, and like he got us on that one by making 5 threes, and because he was wide open, and just again, sometimes that happens. And then UNC Wilmington, like, I know maybe by now people don't hate me saying it as much as they hated it right after the game, but like UNC Wilmington's pretty darn good offensively, and like Trezarian White, the guy that was making that tough jumper over Justin Edwards, like I don't really want to say this, but like Trezarian White's better than Justin Edwards. At least right now.
Right now.
So, like I mean, it shouldn't be shocking. Well, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be that shocking that he's making these shots. Like, he was the better player in that matchup. That's why they won the game, was because he was literally one of the best players on the floor. And yeah, that stinks to say as a Kentucky fan, but like it was true on that night. And I think it'd be true a lot of nights. Like, he's a really good player.
But even with that, Justin Edwards' hand is right in his face. And I put DJ Wagner in that same situation. I mean, no one's really blocking that shot. He got enough. He's going to get enough separation. That was a tough shot. And that was one of the daggers that they had. And including this one where I thought Reed played pretty good defense. And Phillips, man, he just made some tough plays. I don't know why I still talk about this game, but it's like even when Kentucky wins, I still just like, but UNC Wilmington. Like I just can't help it to be like they should. They're sixth in the country, should be like third or fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really worth harping on. There's a lot of things. Main problem we figured out was the floor was the issue of that game. It didn't affect UNC Wilmington as much.
My main thing, Steven, is some of this is just, I feel like I've watched enough basketball that don't be surprised when good players make shots late in the game. That's kind of just how I just think about it, is if you let a good player get a shot, it doesn't necessarily have to be a great shot, but if you let good players get to their spots and get to where they want to go to, they will make shots. And I think a really good example of something that's the Kansas game last year at Rupp Arena, where Kansas hit maybe 3 threes kind of at just the very end. Like they just had good players.
How about
get
Kansas
shots.
State also? Kansas State was like the same thing. Like they didn't hit a 3 all game, and then there's just 4 in a row right as the game is when Kentucky's up 4 and have a chance to put it away. Lance Ware was going to be the hero.
Well,
his dunk to put him up 4. Yeah.
And the other the other good example of what we're talking about, luckily, is Kentucky this season. Like that's why we like the reason we beat. Yeah, like whoever the people are that run Floppy Action North Carolina, like whoever's on that show, like they're talking about the same exact thing. They're saying, why can we not get a stop against DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham and Antonio Reeves late? Like I think all 3 of those guys hit tough, contested, mid-range jump shots that like
Rob had a one-handed shot where he was like 1 foot in the lane at the top and just flipped it up there.
The last thing I want to say before we get off of this topic, and I had texted Steven this, and something I appreciate about Steven, like he said earlier how he's learning from us on the basketball side. I feel like I'm kind of relearning how to be a fan as well, and not just be like the nerd coach from Steven, because I appreciate how like he's always worried. He's always worried about something. And it can never we can never just be number 6 in the country. It has to be like, well, but we could be number 3, and that's what I love about Kentucky fans. But it was funny, like
2015, we weren't winning by enough.
Yeah, but he sent kind of like the graphics that you've seen here on the show. Like he sent some of those numbers to Zach and I, and I immediately, about we got 3 stops in 3 games or whatever, and I immediately was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, there's zero chance that this is true. Like, I'm gonna go. Like, I'm gonna fix this. Like, I'm gonna talk to these basketball bennies, and I'm gonna let them know what actually happened. And I'm like, well, good Lord, like it was perfectly right. Like I'm scrolling through, and the funniest part was I literally started like laughing to myself because like the very first play that I see was a stop, and I'm like, well, there's no chance he's right now because like there was a stop with like 3:58. I'm like, all right, 1 possession, 1 stop. I'm already winning this debate. And then like, nope, that Steven was exactly right. So credit to the basketball bennies. Sometimes they're not as dumb as they look.
No, I'm not as dumb as I look sometimes. Emotional though. You got to see through the fog of the emotions and and it's hard to do that as a fan. So that's why I rely on you guys. But that's why like I was texting you guys during the UNC Wilmington game, I think with about 8 minutes to go, and I was like, I'm turning it off. I think they were down 4 with 8 minutes to go. And I was already, I think Brandon, what was the message you sent me? Like, you were playing the role of a irrational fan so well.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap on episode 3 of Floppy Action. Another great one in the books. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching here. From myself, Brandon, and Steven. Thank you all very much. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. We're always open for feedback and all that. So thank you all very much. We will do this probably after our first couple SEC games. So we will see you again then.